Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting for September 6, 2023. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendoronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and the Town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. First up, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we move to the public meeting. Pardon me? No, that's after. All right. Good evening and welcome to the public meeting for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 264 Main Street East. Before we begin, I'd like to provide, I did that already. The premise of this public meeting is to provide the opportunity for the public to provide input on the proposed application. I would like to stress that there have been no decisions or recommendations made by council or planning staff on these applications. This meeting is conducted in accordance with the town's procedural bylaw. All participants are asked to conduct themselves with decorum and respect and provide the opportunity for all members of the public to express their opinion in an environment of tolerance on all points of view and free of intimidation. The intent is to create a venue to encourage people to participate in the process and provide their input. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Town of Grimsby to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Grimsby before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Grimsby before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. With us this evening is Sina Suleiman-Pools, planning staff in attendance, Michaela Bray, and Walter Basic. Tonight we will start with staff providing a brief presentation outlining the process and the application, and that will be followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions. If you have not already done so, please ensure you have signed in so you will be informed of future meetings on this proposal. As we navigate this public meeting, we asked all participants for your patience. Each participant will be called in order and we provided 10 minutes to speak. Each presenter may speak only once. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please do not duplicate the remarks. All the comments are being recorded and will be taken into consideration. Michaela?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you, everybody, for coming this afternoon to the OPA and ZBA public meeting for the sites known as 260 and 264 Main Street East in the Town of Grimsby. I'm Michaela, planner with the Town of Grimsby, and I'll be going through this public meeting tonight. We also have Senon Polis on behalf of the applicants over Zoom. And he'll be here to answer any questions about the application. So on the agenda tonight, we'll have the planning department presentation, and then there'll be a period for questions and comments and delegations, but we don't have any, so questions and comments. The purpose of the meeting is to provide an overview of the planning process, provide overview of policy and some of the regulatory frameworks, provide information on what's being proposed, as well as, again, answering questions and gathering any feedback about the application. So I'll go over why plans and bylaws can change. So under the authority of the Planning Act, applicants are allowed to submit applications for development proposals, even if they don't meet the requirements of the official plan or zoning bylaw. And then, again, under the Planning Act, the town has to process these applications. And then we can amend the official plan and zoning bylaw if it's determined that the changes comply with the overall intent of the official plan, and result in compatible development and show good planning. Just an overview of the planning process. So this application was first started or initiated back in May 2022 with a pre-consultation meeting. This outlined what all the required submission materials would be to do a proper review. Planning was there, building, engineering, conservation authorities, as well as the region were all there to request application submittals. Once they had those all prepared, they submitted the application. This was posted online to the current planning applications on the website, as well as circulated to the agencies that need to do technical review. Then in April, there was the initial public open house, which is very similar to the meeting we're having now. It's just an opportunity to give an overview of the application as well as get feedback from anyone in attendance. So now we're at the statutory public meeting as required by the Planning Act. Just another opportunity to go over what is being proposed as well as answer any questions and gather feedback. Once we're done this, we'll continue to be doing analysis and revisions and just addressing any outstanding comments either by the public or by the agencies. So like Engineering Conservation Authority, for example. And once we are satisfied that the application is appropriate, we would bring a recommendation to this planning committee to give their approval or denial recommendation for council to ratify. So planning is a public process, so we do want the public to be involved and participate. So to have your say, you can tell us what you think by writing a letter or emailing the planning department. You can also send a copy of that to your board councilors. And to stay informed, you can provide us with your mailing address or your email to get notice of future meetings, as well as receive information about speaking in front of the committee or eventually appealing the application. So now I'll get into the proposed development here. So this slide shows the extent of 260 and 264 Main Street East. So on the right side of the screen is 264, and that's where there is a current building that is being used as a medical/dental clinic. And then there's 260 on the left side, which is a residential property. The red box outlines the area that 264 Main Street East wishes to acquire from 260. The purpose of this is to expand the parking so that the applicants can use the entirety of the building. So when this application first came to planning, it was determined that the parking on the site was insufficient to support the total, the use of the entire gross floor area of the site. So the part in blue on your screen right now is vacant. They can't use it. They can only use the portion of the building that's shown in white. So ultimately, kind of the intent of this application is to provide enough parking so that this already existing building can be used in its entirety. So as part of this process, we'll need to do an official plan application and a zoning bylaw application. So on the right, there's Part A and Part B. Part A and B are subject to the zoning bylaw application. Part A is to be rezoned from a residential detached zone to a neighborhood commercial zone to allow for that parking lot. Part B is to keep its residential detached zoning, but add in some site-specific policies to just comply with some technicalities of the zoning bylaw. And then Part A only is subject to the official plan amendment, and that's to change the designation from a low-density residential to a neighborhood commercial, again, to allow for that parking lot. So I'll go into a bit more detail about the official plan. So as I noted, it's just that center part, or Part A. That is the lands to be acquired, and they're zoned low-density residential. That allows for only residential uses and some related uses. It's quite limited to single detached and semi-detached homes. So this area is considered stable residential, but it does allow for limited development and evolution. So that centerpiece, Part A, is proposed to be neighborhood commercial, and that would allow uses such as grocery stores, retail, medical clinics, coffee shops, etc. And then the zoning, so the current zoning at 264 Main Street East, and then that part in the center, that's going to be rezoned. That neighborhood commercial zone permits a range of commercial uses, including clinics, retails, and then the 260, so Part B, will keep its Main Street zone and just have some site-specific provisions. And I realize I might have said residential detached before, but it's Main Street, but they have very similar provisions. So it's like a Main Street residential zone instead of the residential zone I mentioned before. So just one more item to mention. This plan shows the maximum extent of development that could happen in the area. So it's going to depend on what uses end up going into that blue part and the parking ratios that would be required. So the maximum amount of spaces based on parking ratios could result in what's shown here. So all of that additional parking. But if the uses don't require like a high parking ratio, there's potential that there could be less parking. And this would all be sorted out in the site plan phase, as well as some specifics about garbage location and loading and unloading zones. So that concludes what I have. So I welcome any questions for either myself or the applicant.
Thank you for your presentation, Michaela. Members of the Planning Committee, Councilor Bradsey.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thank you for this guy's report. I just wanted to touch on the one page where it talks about the regional road allowance and the irregular additions to the daylighting triangle. It says, see the attached sketch. It's just kind of quite small and not really make out much of the details. I was wondering if we could blow up a larger image on the screen or kind of go into detail of what that change was.
Yeah, I can try and find a better image for that. But it would just, from what I understand, it would just be road widening to like their standard road width. I don't have that exact number, but it would be an opportunity for them to widen to their typical required road width from the center line.
I read somewhere in the report that it said that there needed to be something constructed in the daylighting triangle, which was my concern. So the daylighting triangle is intact, is basically all I'm asking.
I know, I don't know the specifics, but there are certain things that can be developed in the daylighting triangle, such as like utilities and such. So I can get back to you with those details, but that's what I assume would be the development that's being referred to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a clarification on what an irregular addition means.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The last time this came to council, oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Turn your mic off. Last time this came to council, the resident that sits behind the parking, where the parking's going to go, had a concern about, I guess it was the visual effects and the noise of the traffic that were parking in that parking lot. And this, I believe they came to some type of an agreement that they would plant more trees or something in there to help them. Did that happen, or was that confirmed? And is that still on the cards? I'm just concerned about the residents in my ward.
Yeah, so I was made aware of their presence at the open house, which I believe you're referring to. They did have concerns about specifically having the garbage right up against the lot line, and that's something that we flagged as well. And that specifically is going to be dealt with at site plan. We have brought it up to the applicants through our comments that the garbage should be located like in its present location, which is up against the building, instead of being at that residential property line. And then for screening, that's something that could also be decided and agreed upon at the site plan stage. But we can keep that in mind and discuss further with the applicant. But those kind of specifics of location of like the loading space or the garbage, as well as required vegetation, would be dealt with at site plan. But it's good to have those ideas as we go into it and be aware of them as early as possible.
Our planner is already working on modifying the location for the garbage area. We should get a revised one very soon.
Okay. So I assume, because I gather from that meeting, that open house, there was a consensus of opinion, and they were kind of in agreement that they would sort that out, and they would put the garbage area in the right place, and they would put the trees in there. So that's what I understood, that they were quite open, the owners were quite open to do that. So I guess that'll come up in the site plan, so that'll come, is somebody talking?
Sorry.
Yeah.
The owner or
Yeah. Yeah, the applicant, yeah, okay. So, okay, just keep an eye on that, that's all. Thank you.
Member Drew, then Member Phillips.
Through the chair, thank you for your presentation. When this came before the planning committee in May, there was questions about privacy for 260. And subsequent to that, I've reviewed the landscaping plans. So my understanding is there's solid fence, plus trees, plus ornamental grass, being the barrier between the two properties. Is that correct?
Yes, there should be.
Again, it's more of a site plan issue, but from what I gather, the applicant is interested in mitigating those sort of effects. I know that the Heritage Committee, since 260 Main Street East is on the register, that they have suggested as much vegetative screening as possible. So there's going to be kind of multiple perspectives as to why this privacy just needs to be dealt with and implemented. And again, site plan will lock all of that down.
Thank you.
Member Potter.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Two questions. First one, you raised it when you were talking about the garbage skip location about loading, unloading. Does the sort of the roading that would be put in place around it's the west side of the new parking area? Does the road width there allow for the size of trucking that would be potential at the site, or is that going to be restrictive to the access points? I just worry about blockage of entryways and making sure that there's no semis getting stuck around corners and stuff like that. So is there enough space for the sort of envisaged trucking that would be used at the site?
From what Seinan, did you want to speak?
Sorry, I wasn't sure who the question was directed to, but the existing garbage bins currently is at the same spot as we speak right now. There are a couple other options that we can relocate it somewhere else. There's the other option that we have to relocate it closer to the adjacent property that we're expanding to, where there's less residential. The residential is actually further away from our other neighbors, and there's enough room to place it there. But currently, the current location for the bins is in that spot as we speak.
Yeah, so, it was more than just the garbage bins. If there was large semis coming in with medical equipment or whatever for general transportation, unloading, loading, more than just the garbage bins.
For the current use, it's very light use of everything goes from the front door. We don't have much to go through the back, and even when we were doing the construction for the dental part, where they had the big equipments for each chair for the dental, we had no problem taking everything from the front door. So I don't see a problem in the future unless something changes with the other use is being committed to the other part, the vacant part, which we can accommodate, of course, because everything is going to be submitted through the city.
Yeah. So just maybe an obvious question that I don't know the answer to. I mean, obviously, the developer and the owners of 260 are coming to an agreement or still coming to agreements. That's not my purview. Was there any considering, because I assume it's empty, I don't really know, the lot effectively south of the property, was that an option for development as well? Or is that an option if there is a parking issue?
You mean the lot south of us?
Yes. On the adjacent to Bartlett, directly south. It's not a full block behind, but it's...
That was our first option. It's currently, it used to be one big parcel and currently rezoned into, I think, 5 or 7 detached homes. We did manage to reach to the owner, but it wasn't feasible for us because it has been already developed and severed. And what he was asking per lot is not feasible for us to do it.
Okay, so thank you for answering that question. So that raises a third question. I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Back to the planning department. If that is being developed into residential as opposed to Google Maps showing it as a forest at the moment, was that taken into account in all the work that's been done to date on the landscaping and everything? Because if there's another residential lot attached on the south side, that may lead to different considerations.
Walter?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. The abutting lot to the south, this application was made prior to the lands to the south being subject to development applications for zoning amendment and, was it a minor variance? A zoning amendment and a consent application. So the consent application and the zoning amendment for the southerly lands came after this application was made. So the developers are fully aware of this proposal. The portion of the subject site, and again, the subject site is the lands that are being acquired and the lands that are, then the remnant lot with the house on it. The site that currently contains the commercial use is not the subject of this application. The subject of this application is the severed portion of the residential lot, right? And the existing commercial lot has an existing parking lot and an existing loading area to the south of the existing building, next to the new residential lot that's under construction right now. So I hope that answers your question. But yes, when a site plan application comes forward, the entire site will be subject to site plan approval because it's an amendment to the existing site plan by adding more land and modifying the existing parking area. So we will have to take into account, to answer some of the other questions that were put forward, a lot of the technical review of the site and how the site will function will occur at that time. We are satisfied that the site can support all the required features to support the proposed uses. So it's through the site plan approval process where we look at the minutia and the details of the lot grading, servicing, the radiuses of truck movements, waste collection, landscaping, screening, fencing, things like that. So these are things that we're on top of. We understand what the concerns were that were raised at the public meeting. We're very sensitive to that. The concerns that were raised are consistent with the policies that we have in our official plan in terms of making sure that adjacent uses are compatible with each other. So we're satisfied that the proposal can support the proposed use. There will be a technical report that'll be coming forward to the planning committee at some point in the near future, but we've done a preliminary analysis and we will be taking all these things into account when the technical report comes forward, but we will be looking at these things in more detail when the site plan application is to come. So there's still a site plan application to be submitted and reviewed by staff and the region. And by the way, the road widening requested by the region can't be taken as a condition of zoning amendment, or because the lot that they want to get the road allowance widening from is not part of this application. So they'll have to wait for the site plan application to come in, and then they'll be able to ask for the road allowance widening. What was the other question? I think that covers it. There you go.
All right, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your participation in the public meeting. The consultants and staff will take back your feedback. Please contact staff at planning@grimsby.ca if you have any additional comments or questions about the proposal after this evening. The public meeting is now closed. Now we move to approval of agenda on our regular planning meeting. Can I please get a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Member Drew. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Member Drew. Resolved that the agenda for the September 6, 2023 Planning and Development Committee be approved. Now we move to receipt of previous minutes. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Member Drew. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Member Drew. Resolved that the August 10th, 2023 Planning and Development Committee minutes be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, there are no delegations or presentations. There are no consent reports. Now we move to discussion reports. Can I please, first report is PA 23-28, the official plan amendment application and zoning bylaw amendment application at 264 Main Street East. Can I get a mover and seconder to get this item on the floor? Councillor Frake, Councillor Bradzi. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. So because we just had the public meeting, is staff going to redo the presentation or like, no, I didn't think so. So since it was just done and it's all fresh in our mind, resolve that report PA 23-28 regarding official plan amendment, application and zoning bylaw amendment, application at 264 Main Street East dated September 6, 2023, we received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Now we move to report PA 23-29, the OLT decision regarding 29 Kemp Road East minor variance. Can I get a mover and seconder to get it on the floor? Member Potter and Member Drew. I was going to read this.
I think it's probably Walter. I see him up there, but you can just say to staff.
All right, so planning staff's going to start with this. Walter, I assume, you're going to be first off? All right, thanks, Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, in terms of background, there was an application made to the Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance to permit the establishment of a hemp processing facility at 29 Kemp Road East. The application was denied by the Committee of Adjustment and was subsequently appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicants. The hearing was held and the decision was rendered by the OLT, and the decision was to allow the appeal and allow the variance to the zoning bylaw and authorize the variance to the zoning bylaw subject to the following conditions: that site plan approval from the town of Grimsby shall be obtained prior to the final construction completion of the hemp processing facility use, and B, that no processing of hemp leaves and growing or processing of cannabis or cannabis-related products shall be permitted on the subject property. So I've attached a copy of the decision to the report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Walter. Questions? Seeing none, resolved that report PA 23-29 OLT decision 29 Kemp Road East minor variance dated September 6, 2023 be received for information. All in favor?
Mayor, sorry, audience member asked if they could ask questions.
Are they? No, they don't normally are. So.
In case you want to address it.
Yeah, I'll address this because it's a planning meeting. We don't, unless someone has applied for a delegation.
I deferred them last night for talking to for tonight.
All right. Well, see, I wasn't here last night, so. Well, just, Councillor Frake, do you want to speak? I wasn't at the council meeting last night, so. Walter?
Thank you. It's my understanding, I was at the meeting last night, it was my understanding that at the meeting, the chair at the council meeting suggested that if anybody on council had any questions regarding the decision, then this would be an opportunity to do so.
So that
was a comment, I believe, that was made at the council meeting, yeah.
I'm quite happy to defer from our procedural bylaw and allow people to have their say, if that was what was alluded to at the council meeting last night. The fact that I wasn't there, I'm coming at this slightly blind, and I was not given any staff direction on that, So if council, or if the planning committee is happy to entertain people to discuss, Member Potter, how do you feel?
I've actually just, while you've been talking and amongst yourselves, I just had a point of clarification in the OLT ruling that is confusing me a little bit, that I wouldn't mind getting Walter's take on it.
Sure. Why don't we let you, we'll take questions from the committee first, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Go ahead, Member Potter.
So, thank you very much, man. So Walter, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it simplistically. Under section or paragraph 95 of the order, it says that the site plan approval from Grimsby shall be obtained prior to the final construction of the hemp processing facility. Fine, no problem. Then the B bit, which you already mentioned, it says no processing of hemp leaves, and the word specific there is leaves or growing or processing cannabis or cannabis-related products. So is there nuance there that hemp can be processed at the facility, assuming if there is approval from Grimsby, but anything that contains CBD, like in the leaf, or other cannabis products would not be allowed? Is that the correct? Because otherwise it looks like it's conflicting to me.
I'm going to read it literally. It says no processing of hemp leaves, so you can't process hemp leaves, but you can process, yeah, that's right, but you can process other
stems and
parts of, based on literal interpretation of what this says.
Yeah.
And, or the growing or processing of cannabis or cannabis-related products shall be permitted on the subject property. So growing and processing of cannabis is not permitted on the site, and the restriction on hemp is the processing of hemp leaves.
I'd encourage staff to look at the nuances in those words, because to me it's subject to variations and interpretations still.
I would be happy to hear your interpretation, or how it could be interpreted.
So if I have hemp material coming in, and I'm allowed to process the stalks, I would have to remove the leaves. But I'm not allowed to remove the leaves because I'm processing the leaves then. So I'm not sure what's actually being processed at the plant. If it's just the stalks are coming in with that have been pre-processed somewhere else. To me, simplistically, it says anything to do with CBD cannot be done on site, which is the, that's not the word now, but the actual controlled substance in the material that goes into tobacco and other products, that sort of thing.
Yeah, these are the nuances that we'll have to address through enforcement. Right now, we have a decision. Sorry? That we'll have to address through enforcement, but we'll clarify the details of the decision of the Ontario Land Tribunal through the site plan approval process. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got clarification. Do we? All right, go ahead, Councillor Frake.
Well, Member Potter went down the same road I wanted to go down, but my biggest concern is how we are going to monitor, and it is a little bit confusing in here, there's no question about that. It's kind of, you can process something, but you can't process something, and it's really confusing, and it's going to take almost forensic monitoring, if I might put it that way, to ensure that what they're doing in this particular processing facility, we're going to have, I don't know how we're going to do this, but are they going to have, we're going to have somebody standing there like on the side of the road, going in every hour on the hour, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's a tough one. Because, you know, Ian is right, the nuances in there is very confusing. Are they processing, are they growing, are they processing leaves, are they processing stalks? I mean, it's still, there's still a lot of questions in there. And, you know, heaven forbid, I mean, I don't want to squash, you know, an opportunity for some economic development in the area, but is this going to conflict with our original cannabis bylaws that we put in place? I think it was last year or last term, but last year. So I think there's still a lot of things in here that needs to be clarified, but I don't know how we go about doing this because we can't send it back to OLT. Is that correct? The decision is made, it's done. That's a question, Walter.
Yeah, there are opportunities for a review of the decision.
Which would
So there was a 30-day deadline for an automatic review if upon request, but special circumstances can be considered, like was presented at the council meeting last night. But in terms of, barring that, in terms of the process going forward, we will be seeking clarification with the applicant. We will be seeking clarification and interpretation of that particular, because right now, the way it sits, that's a zoning regulation, right? So the way it sits, we'll need an interpretation of how that's worded. We'll want to consult with our legal representatives and determine if there are areas of conflict in terms of interpretation, how do we address those? Right? So these are legal questions that I'm not in a position to address right now at this point. And the other, it's something that was brought up at the hearing, the awkward thing is I was on the opposite side of our legal representation in the cross-examination, and I'll need to consult with Mr. Helinski regarding this. He received the notice like we all did, and I haven't heard anything from our legal representative in terms of concerns regarding the decision at this stage. But if there are concerns that are raised by members of the committee, members of council, or members of the public, these are issues that we can deliberate over with our legal counsel and see if we can come up with a rational answer to some of these questions that may arise. And if necessary, council has the ability to request our legal representative to put forth a request to the province or to the OLT regarding clarification on the decision itself.
I think we should do that. I don't know if we can make that decision tonight here. But it all boils to the biggest... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think we would want to consult with, so identify what the concerns are, consult with our legal representative, and then he can report back to council, and then council can make a decision as to what the next steps going forward should be. Okay, Member Potter brought up some concerns that need to be clarified. I mean, that we need to document those concerns. Those are things we should take to our legal counsel. The other part of it is that the biggest concern people have is the concerns we all had with the cannabis manufacturing facilities on the east end of town, and that is the odor. Whatever they do there, is it going to be, and I think it really comes down to that at the end of the day, if I might say so, is that are they going to live in an environment where there's going to be this skunky stench being given off on various times of the day, week, whatever the case might be? Because I was led to believe that wasn't going to be the case. It wouldn't happen that way. They wouldn't get that odor floating around up in the escarpment. So I think we need to clarify that too. What they're doing there, is it going to create some type of unlivable environment for people to live in that area? I'll leave it at that. You know where I'm going, so I think we need to clarify that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if there are any concerns from the public or from members of council, again, these are issues that we would like to address. It's in our best interest to do it also. But we need to know what those issues are. Some of the issues were expressed at the meeting on council last night. They've been recorded. So we have a record of what the concerns are, and we will, it's my intent to put your presentation to our legal counsel to get an interpretation of what, and then report back to council. But again, if there are any other concerns other than those that were presented at the council meeting last night by members of the planning committee or members of council, this will be an opportunity for us to record what those concerns are, like the one you just mentioned, and put those concerns to our legal counsel, and then we can report back and identify what the best approach going forward is.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Just
Walter.
before we go any further, I've conferred with the clerk, and our procedural bylaw allows the chair to have allow delegations. So whoever would like to speak, all you need to do is state your name and come up. You can organize among yourself who would like to speak first. All we ask is regular delegations take place so you don't repeat yourselves. If you do have a speaker that you'd like to speak, I'm quite fine with that. If there's a couple people that like to speak, I'm quite happy with that as well. So whoever would like to come up, given the fact that, all right, go ahead. Just state your name when you get up to the mic, turn the mic on. And
my name is Gord Van Egmond. I live at 92 Kemp Road East. I've been following this quite closely, and one thing that has really baffled me about it all is it seems like the council, the planning department, and even the OLT has never visited a processing facility, seen a video of it, understood anything about it. And it's troubling to me that we can make these big decisions that get stuck on our neighborhood. We don't know if chemicals are being used, water's being used, electricity's being used, how things are being processed, what machines are being there, nothing. So you have a party coming into our area, wants to process something, we have no idea how it's done. I think if I was processing something, I'd love to show you another facility that does it, or I'd like to show you at least a video. We have no idea what will be done in that building. We have no idea about the odor control or anything. I have 2 letters here from growers of hemp that are my customers, one in Wisconsin and one in New York. They grow hemp inside greenhouses and outside greenhouses. They state very clearly it is identical to marijuana except for the plant and the CBD oil, and it smells bad. When it flowers, there's no way around it. And I'm not sure if the OLT is also permitting growing outside. I wasn't clear on that, if that was going to happen or not. If that does happen, when it flowers, it smells. There's just no way around it. And there's acres and acres of it. And I'd like to leave this with you, just from 2 growers that I've gotten. All right?
all right, thank you very much. Anyone else?
My name is Donna Latchford, and I spoke last night, and I'm not going to repeat what I said, but I did write a few things down today that came to my mind after the meeting. And basically what I'd like to say is that industrial hemp, it has some exemptions, but it's still a cannabis plant. It's like saying like a motor vehicle dealership doesn't include pickup trucks. And a cannabis plant has regulations, our official plan has regulations for where it can be grown. And nothing against hemp or any of these things, but this is not the appropriate area. Our official plan, which was like a year ago, enforced and made more strict to protect against this, is just being completely overlooked by the OLT. They don't even be concerned about what we as our community want for our community. And cannabis cultivation comes with many negative effects, which we are all aware of, and that's why council put into place specific protections by way of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments in September of 2022. There's a 40-year deed restriction on this property that prohibits any building or buildings that shall be used for the purposes involving commercial greenhouses, and it prohibits anything on this land or in the buildings on this land that's a nuisance to the occupants of the neighboring lands or buildings. And I have a copy of that, which I can leave with you as well. The section 3328 of the official plan states the agriculture-related uses shall only be permitted in special crop areas through site-specific rezoning. Another one the OLT completely overlooked. It says shall only be through site-specific. You know, and the OLT completely ignored the intent of the official plan for formal planning processes. And this is setting a precedent for developers to ignore those processes and instead go through the committee of adjustments by using minor variances. Section 3338B of the official plan states agricultural related uses shall only be permitted in special crop areas if they cannot reasonably function in a suitable location within the nearby urban settlement. The OLT also ignored this intent of the official plan to direct these uses away from special crop areas. The town's industrial corridor along the QEW and elsewhere has vacant lands that are suitable locations. We only have so much specialty crop, and it should be protected. Industrial hemp, which by scientific and federal definition is a cannabis plant with low THC, has all the negative effects of high THC cannabis. The OLT improperly accepted a hemp industry witness as an impartial expert who claimed that the odor levels of hemp are virtually non-existent. This has been demonstrated not to be true through many U.S. cities that have permitted these facilities. There's no separate consideration for industrial hemp in our official plan or zoning bylaw because they are legally defined as cannabis and would therefore fall under any cannabis provisions and requirements in the planning documents. Our wording in the town's official plan and its intent were not considered by the OLT in reaching their decision, resulting in them being completely ignored. This is an obvious lack of procedural fairness. By accepting the OLT decision, we open the door to other agricultural lands growing outdoors and with no setbacks, which can affect our whole community. The intent of official plan and zoning bylaw is clear and needs to be enforced. The misinterpretations and errors make this OLT decision invalid. The decision ignored parts of the town's official plan and zoning bylaw and was not based on solid legal grounds or proper evaluation of the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Any further residents like to speak?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Dixon. I live at 15 Kemp Road East, which is the direct west neighbor to the subject property. The concern that we have in terms of when we were building, we were required through the town of Grimsby to hire an engineering group, the IBI group, to make sure that our house was built at a set distance, a grade level, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there was tens of thousands of dollars spent on this that was required when we were building our home. The concern that we have is every time it rains, anytime that the snow melts, we are completely flooded from the 29 Kemp Road property. There is a natural stream that runs from the forest to the east of that property, through our property, and out to Mountain Road. We are constantly flooded by that property. Now, they have all these expectations of putting in the septic system, a well, having, you know, potentially up to 10 people that are working there, you know, truck traffic and everything else. What's going to happen with all of that wastewater, groundwater? Where is that all going to end up? Because they don't have capacity on a septic system and a well to provide the amount of water that they're going to be required to use. The other concern I have is there's absolutely no business plan that was put forward. The applicant jumped back and forth between processing dry material, wet material, which was highlighted at the OLT. How do you approve a business plan that doesn't exist with an applicant who is constantly jumping from one tactic to another just to try and appeal to the people that have concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any further residents like to speak?
My name's Melissa Schrett. I don't live on near the subject area, but I do live on Church Road. And my concern is also to add to the fact that the road is tar and chip only. How is that going to support truck traffic? And it's not like a once in a, he kind of tried to allude to the fact that, well, farmers can harvest their crops. Yes, they harvest their crops once a year, and that's it. It's not every day. It's not trucks coming back and forth every day. So I just thought that should be also addressed.
Thank you. Any further delegations? All right, go ahead, Dave.
David Latchford, 290 Mountain Road and 60 Elm Tree Road. When Donna's family developed that 100-acre parcel to become 8 residential lots and then 2 back lots, this property with the 34 acres approximately was a back lot, and Donna's mom put a deed restriction on there that's for 40 years. No greenhouses, and actually the closing, I don't have it in front of me, but it was no annoying uses. Well, I think, you know, we called Walter about that kind of in the beginning of this and said, like, did you know that there's a deed restriction on the property? The people that bought this property must know that because it's all part of the legal setup here for buying a property. Well, Walter said, well, very well, but that's a civil matter. You have to take that to a civil court after. So, I mean, that's an opportunity that's still before us, but just a consideration there that the boldness of these people just to sort of blow through that and continue in the fashion by which they started this whole process. In fact, it was me who drove by seeing all these loads and loads of dirt, and I mean not 1 or 2, we're talking probably 200 or 300, and mixed gravel. And every color of dirt, like how many gas stations in Toronto are getting cleaned out, and this was just a convenient spot to put this stuff. I kind of learned that there's a requirement for moving fill in town. If you have more than 10 truckloads or something like that, you're supposed to get a permit to do that. The dirt has to be certified dirt. Well, so I called the building department and said, are you aware of all this construction going on? And I called Public Works. Are you aware of all this dirt being moved? Oh, we'll go have a look. So everybody ran up and had a look and said, yeah, it looks like we got a problem here. Oh, they don't have a building permit. And they, at this point, already had footings in the ground. They had the building sitting there, big steel, pre-manufactured steel beams and siding and stuff all sitting there waiting to go. all kinds of dirt piles, and, and in the middle of that, they were applying to do this hemp refinery, which is great, but they just switched gears from a hemp refinery, and at the same time, Walter's entertaining them with all of the procedure of doing a minor variance. They just changed their building, or they did apply for a building permit, but they just applied for it as a storage building, a farm storage building. Farm storage building doesn't really have any concern about moving a whole pile of dirt. If you're doing it under the zoning application, you would have to have a permit to move all this amount of dirt. You have an engineer come in, you do a grading study, it's a pre and post situation, all the dirt has to be certified. No, farm storage building doesn't require that. Archaeological, you're supposed to do all that. And no, you don't need to do that if it's just a farm storage building. So the scale of this thing just became far more than, like, to me, a minor variance thing might be like, we're gonna go a foot over on the side of a property line putting an addition on or something like this. This is far beyond that, I'm sorry. I just still can't get my head around that. But anyways, I know when Donna's mom did all the property, we had a lot of hydrogeological stuff that had to be done, soil depths to bedrock. So that area is actually, they did some core samples over there. I know it's very, very shallow, and there was a minimum requirement for like a single septic system for a single house. You know, back in the good old days, you used to get 1 acre lots. Then the new thing, because of your depth to bedrock, was 2.5 acre lots. Okay, so everybody's got really nice, generously sized 2.5 acre lots, only because septic systems support. The other thing we learned in that whole thing was, and I think it's called D54, Donna would have to help me on the wording of that. D54 has a thing in there that says no industrial waste, period. If you're doing an industrial application, like this is gonna be an industrial hemp facility, so what happens when you get the site plan and you go to this whole exercise at this point, and then you come back and the region says, well, because that's, I think, where you go to get your septic permit, and they say, well, sorry, you can't do this. Then what happens? Like, do they just shut down? Do they have to dismantle the building? Do they have to take the fence down so the deer can run through? I don't get it. Like, so does the D54, Walter, have anything? It's a septic tank approval. I think there's a thing about that, like industrial waste. Is it accepted?
The application was circulated to the region.
Yeah.
The region didn't have any objections.
Really? But they didn't have a business plan. They didn't know what they were doing. Like, how can they not? They didn't know what they were doing. We don't know what they're doing. How can they know what they're doing?
They will be involved in the review,
Okay.
like you said.
Okay. So in the 30th day, which was yesterday because of the long weekend, it was actually Saturday, you have a chance to take this back to the OLT, I guess, and do a review, pick up on some of these finer points. I mean, we got to really look closely at the federal definition of cannabis, the provincial one, the town of Grimsby's version of it. I don't know. But I think federal supersedes provincial, provincial supersedes towns and municipalities and things like that. So we just need to take a close look, and I appreciate your time for listening. You can see there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of really upset neighbors here, and we just want this to come to a happy ending, and that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marie Gomez-Pagnotta, and I live on Mountain Road as well, very close to the facility, 279 Mountain Road. And what I'd really like, and I think all of us neighbors here would really like to understand, is the answer to Councillor Frake's question, which was, how is what they're doing in this facility going to be monitored? I think we really want to have an understanding, because what we've seen is that they say they want to do something, and then it comes to light that they have other plans. So how can we trust that they are going to just process these hemp seeds and not do anything more than that? Because so far from what we've been able to see, even at the OLT meeting, is that, you know, they say they want to do one thing and then it's another thing. Before going into this meeting with the OLT, we had no idea that they were even contemplating planting hemp on this property. That was not ever raised until we were at that meeting and until we saw the documents that were circulated to us prior to the meeting. So what else do we not know that they're going to be doing? And also, we'd like to have some kind of clarification on, you know, we've talked about how, you know, according to the Government of Canada, you know, hemp seems to be a cannabis plant. So does that mean that they're not going to be growing hemp on this facility or on the property here? Or are they going to find some way to say that hemp is not a cannabis plant and they can in fact grow it there? We just want to know, will hemp be grown on this property or will it not? Because the order from the OLT says that cannabis cannot be grown. So can we then assume that means that because hemp is a variation of a cannabis plant, that it can also not be grown? Because based on discussions with the neighbors, my understanding is that they can grow hemp there, or they believe that they can grow hemp there. So there's some confusion, I think, that we all have in terms of whether or not they're actually going to be able to grow hemp there. So if we can just get some clarification on that, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul DiPolino, my wife Emina. We live at 271 Mountain Road, right behind 29 Camp. And I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody said because it's pretty much what I had on my notes here as well. I did find interesting tonight, though, listening to the first item there for 260 and 264 Main Street, how they went through the process, which seemed like the proper process of a zoning change and everything for a parking lot. Yet we're doing a hemp processing facility and a minor variance is okay. I found that completely mind-boggling. So again, that was just something, you know, we've seen here tonight. The other thing was, it was brought up that we all needed to use IBI Group in the construction of our homes as part of the permitting process and the site plan process, which we all did, we all paid for. And I was really shocked on John Arians. His complete testimony at the OLT was almost overlooked and disregarded by the OLT, which was, again, we sat there 3 days of listening to all that, and he was just basically, thank you for your presentation, and I think the OLT just basically sided with Mr. Basic, and I think it was, I don't have their name right, I think it was Mr. Randall, possibly. And the outcome was what it was. You know, the applicants got exactly what they wanted, and it was just another just mind-boggling turn of events there. Again, seeking clarification on the order, the fact that it says no processing of hemp leaves, growing or processing of cannabis, or cannabis-related products. So if one was to assume that hemp is not cannabis, it's definitely cannabis-related. And the way I read this is, or cannabis-related, I mean, you cannot grow hemp either. It's a cannabis-related product. So definitely legal clarification is required on exactly what the applicants think they're getting or what was the intent, to make sure we understand if the intent is to grow it, because the original minor variance application, I believe, specifically said no growing of hemp was part of the minor variance application. And sitting in the OLT and listening, their lawyer then said, well, no, we want to grow hemp, and completely changed tunes. So now and I'm reading this and I'm thinking, okay, well, which one is it? Are they growing it or not? Like, this is just way too confusing. We're just not sure. As Dave said, with the construction that's been happening there, we've been watching it. It's right in our backyard. We've seen the whole thing. These people came in, had a piece of property, and basically started construction, no permits, trucked in a whole bunch of dirt without a care. We all know that it's been stated. They also constructed a fence. I spoke to one of the applicants, and they claimed that they spent $200,000 on chain link fence to surround a 35-acre property, completely closed off all of it. No more wildlife's coming through there. And the entire eastern boundary of that land, which is almost 1,500 linear feet, according to John Arians, the planner, is a natural heritage forest. And they put a fence right through it. So how do we figure out if that's even allowed? How do we know? Is it just, what rules did they break there? That's just another interesting one. According to John Arians, there's a 30-meter buffer that you're supposed to stay from the drip line of any tree. So the trees are overhanging the property line. 30 meters is another 100 feet into the property. They put the fence right along the trunks of the trees. So is that something that, again, the town's legal department would be able to look into? As far as just what's happened on the property, in addition to the permit, which I now understand it's a storage building, that's fine, they have a permit for that. But grading, I guess, will come with the site plan approval and that review. So to go forward here, we're going to seek. I hope clarification is going to be, we're going to seek on the order. Now, as far as the 30 days, I understand lapsed to, I guess, appeal to the OLT, but I guess we're going to seek legal counsel if there's a special condition where we can go back to the OLT. What's the process for that? How is the public kept informed? How do we follow this? Can we follow it?
Walter, do you happen to know the process?
Sorry, which process are you referring to?
The appeal. So I understand the appeal for the OLT. We lapsed a 30-day appeal process, but you said there was a special case that can still be done by the council?
This is based on research that Donna has done. So what I intend to do is get all the concerns that have been expressed here at this meeting and at the council meeting last night, and provide the information to our legal counsel. He will look at the issues that have been raised and provide advice to Town of Grimsby Council to determine what can and should be done going forward, whether it's a clarification, whether it's a challenge. So if it's legal advice to council, it'll be up to council, but council may have to do it in camera, so in closed session. But that's something that the clerks will determine. But they will. But that's essentially the process. So if it's brought forward again to council, there will be an item on one of the future council agendas to deal with it. So, and if councilors are willing to keep everybody informed, then that's, it's not a process that is subject to any regulation or policy where we're required to or should be notifying anybody. So it's up to really council on what they want to do. So we'll have to take their lead, and we'll also have to take the lead of our legal representative in terms of advice. So that's, hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. No, that's fine. Okay. So I want to end with just one final item. So when the minor variance first came out, I specifically read the no growing of hemp. So, thought we were contending with, okay, there's this building, they're going to process something. That was the first deal. Then when we sat through the OLT and learned that they actually want to grow hemp, I mean, now we're talking just a whole nother can of worms here. I mean, growing hemp which apparently does stink, outside in 35 acres of open air property with the way the wind blasts through that area up there, I mean, the can of worms we're opening up here for the town of Grimsby and every property is astronomical here. Like that's the main point there. Like this can get out of control fast for future people even coming in. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Latchford again, and I just wanted to ask one question to Walter. Walter, when you were at the OLT and when they were asking you about odor, and you felt that there wasn't a lot of odor, or that the odor would be controlled through venting and fans and, something like that, how do you control the odor on the outdoors? The indoor odor is with fans, but what kind of control is there on the outdoors? Because I think when you made that opinion, I believe you were thinking of industrial hemp indoors.
Yeah, my comment was related to, sorry, I'm speaking to Donna over here. So my comment was related to, indoor processing. So the concept was materials were being brought to the facility was going to process the products, and it would be like any cannabis growing facility within greenhouses. One of the requirements that we were going to implement through the site plan review process was an odor control study and identifying odor control measures that would have to be implemented on the building itself, like we would for any cannabis growing facility that's done in greenhouses. So it was effectively done on the service road in Grimsby. Unfortunately, the one in the town of Lincoln next to it on the South Service Road, just on the town boundary, didn't implement odor control measures, and that's what everybody smelled in the area. And every time I drive by, I can smell it. But on the Grimsby side, they did implement odor control measures, and they were very effective.
So in your opinion, do you feel that the odor would be controlled if it was outdoors?
I rely on people that know what they're talking about when it comes to odor control and mechanical equipment and things like that. So I rely on other experts to provide advice to myself and to council on how these things can be done. And clearly it can be done because it's been done in other properties in Grimsby specifically,
So the fact that they need odor control means that there is an odor issue, and if it's outdoors, there's no way of controlling it.
Again, I don't know how long you want this conversation to go on for, Mr. Mayor. What was the question?
I'm just saying there's obviously an odor control issue.
I didn't say there's obviously an odor control issue.
Well,
the odor control, because in my mind, I wasn't sure if there was an odor issue with hemp, and the processing of hemp within the building.
Okay.
So in order to address that issue, we wanted a study done and identify measures that would be required to mitigate any odor issues that would be associated with the production of hemp on site. Okay. But when I was asked the question about outdoor growing of hemp, my answer was, I don't know, but the one expert that was there on site, his opinion was that there is no odor associated with hemp. And my response when I was asked that question in Cross, I said, but I would like to get another opinion on that.
Yes.
If you recall.
I do, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're done?
Yep.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you. I said my piece last night, and I know you heard, and I know that's been recorded and everything. So my last point that I want to make, that is the only point I can make to Grimsby Council, is that hemp is a cannabis plant. That is in everywhere you look, every resource I looked. That's what it is. Health Canada. Let's go right to them. Everyone says it's a cannabis plant. It has the same characteristics. It's 6 foot tall versus 3 foot tall. It's more woody and it grows very rapidly. And it's harvest between the dates of July and somewhere, fall. Please, all I can say is please consider the definition of hemp, because what you are authorizing, as it is a cannabis plant, what you are authorizing goes against the bylaw that you already had in place. That's all I can say. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for your delegations. We just need a mover and seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that the delegations from the public on 29 Kemp Road East be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to our main resolution. We already have a mover and seconder, but Councillor Frake, you have a resolution that you'd like to propose instead of the one that's here? I don't know if it's an amendment. Is it an amendment?
Well, I'm not, is it an amendment? Well, it could be a friendly amendment. I just want to say the reason why we're putting this forward is because we all hear last night, and we've heard tonight, there's a huge number of concerns still left out there. There's a lot of questions left unanswered out there. And I think, from what I'm hearing, I think the OLT has probably made it more confusing than what we started with, because they've agreed on things. We seem to think that they've gone beyond the remit, if I might say it that way. So I think we need to parcel up all the questions and concerns we had last night, and the ones we had tonight from folks on this committee and a delegation in the audience, and get our legal counsel to here and get them to qualify and answer all the questions to make sure that, because I still don't hear, I still don't think this is all perfectly following all the rules, our bylaws, and the qualifications of the descriptions of the plants and so on, so a whole bunch of things. To make a long story short, so I think we need to get our legal counsel here to answer those questions from last night and tonight. And then we want to make sure that we have all of you folks who are affected by this to hear what our legal counsel is going to be telling us. And I'm not sure if we can do that at the same time, in the same time at a council meeting. Can that be done at the same time? Yeah. How do we do this so that
it would with our discussion with legal, it's going to obviously be enclosed to start off with, so.
But then can we bring a lot of the answers to the general public?
Yeah, I think that's something that will be forthcoming as we move along this process.
Because I think that's very important, that it goes outside the closed session to these folks. I'll read the resolution I'm suggesting. I believe do I have a seconder? Okay. Resolve that report PA 2329, the OLT decision for 29 Kemp Road East minor variance dated September 6 today be received for information, and that staff be directed to seek legal advice on the OLT decision and bring an update back to council based on the questions and concerns brought forward by the public, the committee members, and councillors. Pretty much good. You okay with that? Okay. I'll propose that.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I absolutely second you, Councillor Freak. I just kind of wanted to vent my thoughts on the situation. I'm very excited to hear our legal counsel's situation, or legal counsel's opinion on this. I'm not a legal expert, but I mean, my thoughts would be, if we're obviously going into close to get that opinion, should anything advanced, it's going to be hard to figure out how we navigate that to keep you guys in the loop, because it would be a closed session matter. Hopefully our clerks and stuff will be able to give us guidance on how we can go about doing that. But then I just want to go, my two main concerns, and the two main concerns I think I'm hearing from most of you tonight and last night are odor and being an outdoor crop. I'm not buying when they tell us it's not going to smell. I think it is going to smell, and there's not too many controls with an outdoor crop. And then my other one would be extraction solvents, which ties into your wastewater and septic bed concerns. Maybe if there's something we could do on the bylaw control level with wastewater tanks, it could have to be collected and not filtered by groundwater. I know common extraction solvents are typically butane. I'm not sure what he's using, but yeah, the reality of challenging an OLT decision, in my non-legal professional view, it looks pretty daunting, but I agree we've got to get another opinion. I just want to be realistic of the play at the plate, for lack of a better word.
All right, and just for clarification, we need to make sure, because we had a different mover and seconder, and we're going to figure out procedurally which mover and seconder takes precedent. We just need to ask Member Drew and Member Potter if they're okay with the amended resolution.
I support the amendment.
I support the amendment as well, Mayor.
All right, and I just want to add one thing, because being a graduate of University of Guelph and taking nomenclature, the way nomenclature works is cannabis can be hemp, but hemp is definitively cannabis. So, and it doesn't take anyone other than anyone who's vested in nomenclature and how things are named and classified to realize that, and that's something that's irrefutable in my opinion. Actually, the delegations were closed. We've received the resolution, but if you want to say something quick, that's.
My only concern about this is how's the city going to monitor that? I mean, it's going to be an expensive for us, okay, in order to monitor these facilities. And we keep forgetting about, my personal opinion. I just came in today. I've heard a lot of the stuff. I support my colleagues. There's other residents in the area. They're not here. How can we distribute what was discussed here today so they can actually read what's happening at council? Thank you.
Through.
Just for your reference, these are all recorded. These meetings are all recorded, and they're available on YouTube.
Well, then everybody should be getting communication how to get there. Right now, I only find out through my fellow colleagues that these meetings are happening. So there's a lot of us that live in the neighborhood. Someone maybe in our alderman, my dad, if you want this information, it's posted on this particular website. If you want to read it, read it. But we don't expect a hard copy, just like we do with the report that we got with the OLT.
Yeah, that's right. There were notifications that were sent out with the original application, and then it's up to the individuals that are interested in the application to follow the application.
Can I suggest we send that communication out to the people? So everybody has the information?
Well, I don't think that it's kind of up to a resident to find out the information, so. But we're quite happy to have the link on the town's website, so that's. of the meetings. They're on there, right? They are. Yes. All right, so we have the resolution moved by Member Potter and Member Drew, amended by Councillor Frake and Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that report PA 2329, OLT decision 29 Kemp Road East, minor variance, and dated September 6, 2023, be received for information, and that staff be directed to seek legal advice on the OLT decision and bring an update back to council as soon as possible based on the questions and concerns brought forward by the public committee members and councilors. All in favor? All right, and that's unanimously carried. Thank you. Now we move to correspondence. There's no correspondence. Any other business pertaining to the committee? No other business. The next Planning and Development Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 20th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you for attending.